Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. If we look at today's The Hindu newspaper, it is dominated by two sets of news. Number one, the Rafale deal, accusations, counter accusations by the government and the opposition is dominating the newspaper headlines today. But whatever we needed to know regarding the Rafale deal is something that we have discussed in yesterday's newspaper analysis, so we need not discuss the same today. Second set of news is the cancellation of foreign ministry level talks between India and Pakistan. And this is also something that we discussed in yesterday's newspaper analysis along with the editorial analysis of yesterday's The Hindu newspaper. So both these news items are something that we don't have to repeat again. Now let us look at today's The Hindu newspaper and see what else is relevant for your examination. Vantangiyas finally on revenue map. Now let us look at what this issue is all about. Vantangiyas is basically a community members of this community were brought from Myanmar during the colonial period. For what purpose? For planting trees. We know that the British introduced a railway system in this country. And while introducing the railway system, a number of trees were cut down. To offset the number of trees cut, the colonial government decided to plant more and more trees to start an afforestation campaign. For that, a group of individuals were brought from Myanmar and ultimately they were responsible for planting trees. These people are whom we call Vantangiyas. Over a period of time, members from other backward castes, members from the Dalit community, they were also asked that you also participate in this afforestation campaign, and they were also referred to as Vantangiyas. But these individuals or the members of this community, since they were inhabiting the forests, these areas would come under the forest department. And when these areas would come under the forest department, the individuals, the members residing in these forest areas were deprived of all the benefits of the state. No ration cards, no identity cards, and ultimately they were kept out of the benefit programs of the government. In 1980s, the Vantangiya community's contribution to the afforestation campaign was recognized, but at the same time this campaign was put to an end. So Vantangiyas were asked that you please evict these forests. So a notice was issued to the members of Vantangiya community that you will be evicted from these forests. They resisted. And after a long campaign, they demanded that our villages should be provided with the status of a revenue village. And last year, the UP government recognized this, and few villages inhabited by the Vantangiyya community, they were conferred with the status of a revenue village. Now let us look at what this revenue village is all about. This revenue village is basically a small administrative region. And this small administrative region has well-defined borders. If we look at 2011 census, it talks about that there are close to 16,600 revenue villages in this country. Some put the number at more, some put the number at slightly less, but close to 16,600 revenue villages are there in the country. Now, what is the benefit? As soon as a village is designated as a revenue village, it automatically gets admitted into the revenue records. It gets listed in the revenue record. And once it is listed in the revenue records, the villagers automatically get the ownership of the land. That means these Vantangiyas who were occupying these forests but they had no right, no ownership land, no ownership right over the lands that they were using. But now, once they have been designated as revenue villages, they automatically get admitted or listed in the revenue records. And once they are listed in the revenue records, they get ownership rights over the land that are in their possession. And then the government can initiate all the schemes in these areas. And once they are listed in revenue records, gram panchayats can also be set up. And you would know that gram panchayats are at level 1 of our Panchayati Raj institutional system. That is what this newspaper article is talking about. Who were these Vantangiyas? Basically, people from Myanmar who were brought to India for afforestation campaign during the colonial rule. Over a period of time, members from other backward castes and the Dalits were also involved in this afforestation campaign. But then in 1980s, they were asked, please vacate these forests. You don't have any right to occupy these forests. And then after a long battle, long campaign, they have been recognized, their villages have been recognized, some of them as revenue villages. And these are the benefits when a village is designated as a revenue village. That is something which is very important for your examination. Now let's look at another important issue on page number 14, DNA metabarcoding. Now let's say, for example, we have an organism. And if we need to know details about this organism, what we do, we collect the DNA sample of this organism. Hair, any other body part, or the skin, and then we analyze the DNA of this organism. But this organism also interacts with the environment. When this organism interacts with the environment, this DNA is expelled and can also be accumulated by the environment. How? That means from this environment, then we can collect this DNA. Which is this environment? This environment can be soil, this environment can be seawater, this environment can be air. That means an organism, when it is interacting with the environment, the DNA gets expelled or accumulated in this environment, and then we can collect this environmental DNA. And the process of DNA metabarcoding is this, that we access the biodiversity of an organism. How? We access the biodiversity of an organism or biodiversity of an area by collecting this environmental DNA. And that method of collecting or accessing biodiversity from this environmental DNA is something that we call DNA metabarcoding. Now, what this news is all about, using this DNA metabarcoding has revealed herb-specific diet of pikas. This newspaper article talks about that the environmental DNA from which, or the environmental DNA that was collected from the animal poop of the pikas. And this animal poop is also required, is also useful to collect various types of information from various types of species. For example, we analyze this animal poop to get to know the tiger's identity, to get to know the stress levels of an elephant. That is how the animal poop is required, is used. But this newspaper article talks about something called the royal spica. Now let us look at what this royal spica is all about. This royal spica is basically a species of mammals. Where do we find this? It's found in India, in Jammu and Kashmir, in northwestern India. It is also found in Pakistan, also found in Nepal and Tibet. Some analysts say that there has been evidence that this pica has been found in China as well. What is the IUCN status of this mammal? Least concern. And the only concern that Royal Pika is facing, livestock grazing is considered as a threat to the royal pikas that are found in India, in Jammu and Kashmir, in northwestern India, and also in Pakistan, Nepal, and Tibet. Now let's look at another issue on page number 9. World Health Organization report says that alcohol intake has doubled in India in 11 years. And this data, this statement you can use while writing your essays, while writing your answers in GS paper 1, wherein one aspect of GS paper 1 talks about society in India. Alcoholism is considered to be a social issue. It is under the influence of the alcohol that domestic violence cases have seen a rise. It is under the influence of alcohol that we have seen violence against the women, particularly the rapes and the eve teasing. So this data or this statement that alcohol intake has doubled in India in the last 11 years can be cited in essays as well as in your society answers of GS paper 1. There are many campaigns launched by different societies, by different activists in India who are calling for total prohibition in India on the patterns of Gujarat and Bihar, where the liquor is banned. And if a question on total prohibition comes in the examination, this is something that you need to understand. And you also need to understand that we have a directive principle of state policy, which talks about that the state has the responsibility to curb the rise of intoxicating drinks. That is one of the directive principles of state policy. Now, what we also need to understand, we need to understand few facts related to World Health Organization. World Health Organization, which released this report, is under the United Nations and is responsible for creating awareness, concerns about international public health. It was formed in 1948. The headquarters are in Geneva, Switzerland. These are some of the factual details that you require, that you need to know from the prelims point of view. And in fact, the date when it was incorporated, when it came into force, that date is celebrated as the World Health Day as well. Now let's look at another important issue from the newspaper today. Milk and poop worries for rescued elephant and rhino calves. Now we know that a World Rhino Day was celebrated on Saturday. This newspaper article talks about some of the facts related to this World Rhino Day, where milk and poop are the worries for elephant and the rhino calves. Elephants are something that we have discussed in our previous current affairs session. In this lecture, let us talk about the rhinos. If you look at the rhinos, they are the largest land mammals after elephants. An important fact for your prelims. And we have 5 species of rhinoceros. 2 are African, 3 are Asian. Out of these 3 Asian, one is Javan, Sumatran, which are also islands, and the other is one-horned rhino, which is also what we call the Indian rhino. Javan rhino also has one horn, but Sumatran rhino is two-horned rhino. Another important fact for your prelims. And when we talk about this one-horned rhino, it is found in India, it is found in Nepal as well. But where exactly is it found in India? Found in Assam, found in West Bengal, and also found in some parts of the western Uttar Pradesh. These are some of the facts that you need to know regarding the rhinoceros. And you also need to understand that basically rhinoceros are herbivores. And the biggest threat to rhinoceros is poaching. These were some of the important newspaper articles that we had to discuss from today's The Hindu newspaper. Beyond that, there is nothing relevant for your examination. If you just watch this video analysis as well as yesterday's video analysis, wherein we talk about the cancellation of India Pakistan talks and the Rafale deal, you don't need to go through today's newspaper at all. Now, let us look at some of the prelims based questions, MCQs. And based on your suggestion, I have also incorporated one map based question as well. And on Sundays, I'm going to give you essay topics instead of mains based GS topics. Which of the following statements regarding WHO are correct? WHO is an independent body not associated with the United Nations. It is associated with the United Nations. According to WHO, absence of disease is the only definition of health. No. According to WHO, state of physical, mental, and social well being, apart from absence of disease, this is how we define public health. This is the definition of health. So both these statements are wrong. In an ecosystem, a flowering plant is being consumed by a caterpillar, which in turn is eaten by a frog. The frog is preyed upon by a snake, which in turn is consumed by a higher predator, such as an eagle. What type of food chain does this feeding pattern represent? The grazing food chain. Map-based question. The Wakhan corridor is a region connecting. It's a narrow strip in northeastern Afghanistan. Now, let me give you some of the essay-based topics so that you can write essays on them. Populism. Is it a threat to democracy? And no force on earth can stop an idea whose time has come. It's a very famous quote by Victor Hugo. And remember, this quote was quoted by Dr. Manmohan Singh when he was the finance minister and he presented the landmark budget in the early 1990s when he gave a speech and it said, "No force on earth can stop an idea whose time has come." So, is it time for India to implement universal basic income? Is it time for India to have a data protection law? Is it time for India to guarantee liberties or adoption rights to LGBT community as well? So there are many ideas whose time has come in India, and that is all that you need to identify and write an essay on that. Beyond this, there is nothing relevant in today's The Hindu newspaper. If you have any questions, suggestions, queries, please drop them and we will definitely cater to your queries. Thank you for being with us. Have a great day.